Hi, I'm Brad Seipert of bradseipert.com, and today I want to show you how to build a very simple URL shortener using just Laravel. Plain Laravel, no JavaScript, nothing crazy, just a really simple Laravel application. And this is part of the Laravel Fundamentals course that I'm working on. We go far more into depth, but I actually was building this and I thought it would be kind of cool to just show you how quickly you can put together something using plain Laravel. In the course, we build something with vanilla Laravel and then build a JavaScript front end on top of it and wire it all up. It's actually really fun, and you should definitely check it out. I'll have a link in the description below. But for now, I just want to show you exactly what we're going to make. So we have a short link here. Foo is a really good example, but I've already used that one. So we'll say we want bar, and with the shortener, you can choose what you want the slug to be. And if you're not familiar with the URL shortener, think of like bit.ly.com. That's a really great URL shortener. So we're going to build a simple one in PHP with Laravel. So we just want this to go to bradseipert.com. So we can submit our query. It gives us a list. You can modify this and do really whatever you want. You can add like the ability to delete these as well. But you can see that bar maps to bradseipert.com. So now in theory, if I go to bar, I'm at bradseipert.com. Awesome. So let's go ahead and just jump in and start building this. So I'm going to pull up my terminal. I actually have the project running right now, so I'm going to, we called this early, or URL-y, and we're just going to say Laravel new. Let's call this URL master. How about that? So it'll take a moment, and it's going to download all of our dependencies for our Laravel application. There's quite a bit, but thankfully Laravel takes care of this for us, so we don't have to worry about making sure that they're all there. So now that we've finished, we can cd into URL master, and we can run PHP artisan serve. So you'll see here that this is putting it's going to run the embedded PHP server, on 127.00.1, which is localhost, and 8,000. So if I were to go back, this is what we see. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and just start cutting this up really quick and just dive in. And with the course that I mentioned, we kind of go a lot slower and take our time. But for now, I just want to show you how quickly you can build something like this. It's actually really neat. So I'm going to pull up an editor. I'm going to use VS Code for this project. And then I'm going to find the project that we just created. We called it URL master. And I'm just going to go ahead and open it. Sure, save. So this is really cool because Laravel gives you so much out of the box to work with that it becomes really easy to build something like this. So we're just going to go ahead and start with this welcome blade PHP. We're going to create a new folder in views, and we're going to call it layout. I'm actually, how do I want to do this? I'm just going to go ahead and drag this into layout. And I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to call this app.blade.php. We're going to keep everything that's here for now, but we're going to go into this content section on line 82, and we're just going to go ahead and gut this, and instead we're going to yield content. So what this does is any of our views, they can have a content section, and it will just inject that content section into this. So I see an issue already. I removed one too many lines, so we can add that div back. Awesome. So if we refresh now, things are going to look really weird. In fact, they're going to look broken because we can't find the view that we just removed. So that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create welcome.blade.php under views, not under layout. And then we need to extend our layout. And since this isn't a subfolder, we do layout.app. And then we say section content, and then end section. And then here we can say homepage or something similar. Now if we reload the page, you can see that we have our homepage. Awesome. So while we're in here, let's go ahead and create just a couple really simple views that we'll use. So we're gonna, let's make a new folder actually. We're gonna call this, actually, let's slow down one little bit. So we're gonna go back to our terminal and you can see that we have a bunch of requests coming in, that's good. We're gonna do PHP artisan make model -- all mapping. So a mapping is what maps a slug on our server to a redirect. So if we run this, we'll have a couple different things happen. So you'll notice here that we create our model, we create a factory, we create a migration, and then a seeder and a controller. That's awesome. This gives us so much to work with right out of the box. So there's one more thing we're going to do while we're in our terminal really quick. We're going to run this command touch./database database.sqlite. So what this will do is in our database folder, it will create a SQLite database for us to play around with. This is just a little easier than setting up MySQL or Postgres for a project like this. In production, you would want to use a real production-ready database and not something like SQLite. But for us, a SQLite actually works really well. So there's one more thing we need to do to our environment to point to that SQLite database. So we say DB connection SQLite, DB database is, it's no longer going to be Laravel. It's actually going to be /project/ we call this URL master /database /database.sqlite. Awesome. So let's see if that works. So now we can go into our database migrations, pick up the most recent one. You'll notice a couple things have been created with our Laravel project. These are tables that Laravel uses. So like users it ships with outside of out of the box. So you have user support built in, which is really great. And then a failed jobs table for any jobs that may fail. We're not going to worry about those for this project right now, but we will come in and we're going to add a table. We want to add a string. So this string is going to be slug table string, and we'll call this redirect. So this gives us an ID, some timestamps. Laravel gives us created at and updated at timestamps, which is really helpful. A column for the slug that we're going to have users input, and a column for the redirect that users will also input. So let's give this a shot and see if it works. So PHP artisan migrate. Projects, database, SQLite does not exist. I actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure that you can't use the tilde. So I don't actually remember what directory I'm in, so let's find out. Yeah, so we'll just take this entire directory instead and put it in just like that. Actually, sorry, I'll give you a second. So it's whatever our project directory is, / our project name, database.sqlite. So if we run this again, hey, look at that. Awesome. Okay, so we've actually done quite a bit in just a few minutes, but we haven't even really got into any of the interesting stuff. So we've created our mapping. So let's go back to our views folder here, and we're going to hit new folder. We're going to type mapping, and we're going to create a couple views. We're going to create show. Actually, let's just do all.blade.php and create.blade.php. So just like with our welcome, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this and drop it into each of these. We're going to change these a little bit. So this create's going to be interesting. So we'll get back to this in just a second. But for now, I'm just going to add a paragraph tag and say this is the all page. And then for this one, we're just going to add a form. And we're going to use this decorator at CSRF. This is something we dive a little bit more into in the course, but it is a token that gets injected to help prevent cross-site request forgery and to make sure that your form submits properly. We're going to add a few inputs. Let's input type text. We need to give them names, so we're just going to call this slug. And the next one is going to be an input of type text. Name equals redirect. And they won't have values associated with them, so we're going to wrap those in labels. And our label here is going to be slug. And these should indent, but unfortunately my editor's not helping me out here. And this is redirect. Awesome. So we created a new controller, but we can't get to these routes yet because we haven't wired them up. So we'll go into our app, HTTP, controllers, mapping controller. And if you're using VS Code, you can hit Command P and just type mapping controller to get here as well. So we have two interesting ones. We have our index and we have our create. And Laravel generates this little doc string that tells you exactly what needs to go here. So a listing of the resource, we're going to say views, and our view is mapping dot, let's take a look, it's mapping, the mapping folder dot all. So we need to return this, and actually, sorry, that's just view. So let's test that really quick and see how that works. So we're going to run into an issue here. Two issues. I have the server not running. Cool. Yeah, so we get a not found. So why is that? Well, we actually haven't added our routes yet. So we have a file called web.php, and it is at the close to the root. It's in the routes folder at the root. So we can add a new route. So we want to say route.get/mapping, and we can copy the above and do a function. But instead, we actually want to do a controller lookup. So we have mapping controller, and then at index. Excuse me, let me make sure that's correct. It is called index. Cool, let's try to run this now. This is the all page. Okay, awesome, we're getting somewhere. So while we're here, let's go ahead and add a couple more routes. So we're gonna add mapping new, and this will point to the mapping controller at create. And we're gonna add one for route post mapping new. And we want mapping controller at, and let's find out, store. So you might be wondering, wait, Brad, these are the same two paths. And you're correct, but we use HTTP verbs to differentiate. So if you're getting a new mapping, it will show you the form, but if you're posting data to the new mapping, it will call the store function on the mapping controller instead. And we'll kind of see how that works in just a minute. So now that we have these, I can go back to the mapping controller, and we probably want to go ahead and do the same thing here. Return view mapping dot, and I believe we called it create, but let me check just to be sure. Resources, views, create.blade.php. Perfect. So if we go here, and now we type in mapping new. Awesome. So we're missing one small thing that I really want to go ahead and fix, because we'll need to in just a moment. So we have our form and our labels. We need an input. So we can add an input type submit. This is it'll look a little weird. We can style this however we want to. But for now, we just want to make sure that there's an input submit. So now that we've added that input submit and we have the submit button on our page, we can go in and actually we can go ahead and try to submit this. It's going to fail. So we'll say, yo, should go to google.com. Okay, that didn't do anything, but you'll notice it added the slug and the redirect up here. So we have a little bit more work to do on this before we're good to go. So the first thing is that our form needs an action. So the action is going to be /mapping/new. And if we try to submit this again with that action, so we'll say yo to google.com. Okay, still nothing happened. Weird. So let's figure that out. So we have our form and we have our store function, but we're not really doing anything yet. So we have this function called dd, which is short for die and dump, I believe. So we want basically our request to die, and we want to just dump whatever we pass to it, which in this case is the request. So now that we've done that, we can try this once more. And we'll say the slug is yet again yo, and we want that to go to google.com. Still not working. Oh, I see what I missed. So we have our form and our action, but we need to add a method to the form. So method equals post. So this is how we differentiate, like I said before, between the different HTTP verbs that we're using. So now that we have this post method on our form, we should be able to post our data to the server. So it actually won't show up in the URL bar anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove, all of this. And we'll try this again, and you shouldn't see anything in the URL bar. In fact, you'll see a very strange page, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Perfect. This is the very strange page. So this is what happens whenever you dd, or when you die and dump a variable to the page in Laravel. So you can see quite a few things about our request that we dump to the page. But the important thing is to know that we successfully got there and we were successfully getting the things we needed with our request. So if we really want to dig into this, we can say request attributes. Okay, there are no parameters. Request parameters, and then, token, slug, and redirect. Perfect. That's what we're expecting to see. So we know that we've posted to our endpoint and we have all the values that we need. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add we're going to say /app/ not migration, mapping. And we want to say new. We're going to store this in a variable called mapping. And then we want to say mapping slug equals request slug. And these are the parameters that we were passing in from our form. Any of them in request and then the brackets and the string value here is the parameter that we're passing in. So we have a redirect, request, redirect. Awesome. So there's one last thing we need to do, and that's mapping save. So this will save a new mapping with the slug and the redirect provided from the request, which is awesome. That's really what a big chunk of this application is. However, it will leave users in a really weird spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to return redirect, and we're going to just redirect to /mapping/ just /mapping. Took me a second. So now that we've done this, if we refresh, it'll ask us, do we want to resend this data? We'll say sure. And you'll notice, there's an unknown class constant new. So let me see. That's funny. Sorry about that. Just to clarify, on line 39, we had mapping : new as a static method. That is not a static method. We just want new app mapping. So let's try this again. Awesome. It sent us right back to the all page. So that probably did what we wanted, but we don't know yet. Why do we not know? Because we haven't actually seen the new mapping that we've created. We assume everything worked, but now we need to go into our index and actually display all of those. So we will do, we'll say items equals app mapping, and then we want to, I think it's all. If it's not all, we should just be able to use get. And then we're going to add an array. And we're just going to say items. And so what this is this sets up view parameters. So these are items. Sorry, that's a really bad term to use. These are things that get passed to our view. And in this case, we have a thing called items, which is going to be an array of items to display. And that gets passed to the mapping.all view. So if we go back to the mapping.all, you'll notice that there's not really anything going on here. So I'll show you really quickly how to find this, because I always stutter through these. So assuming I wasn't already on this page, if you were to go to the Laravel docs at laravel.com and go to documentation, and then you can find just about everything you need here. The basics is a great place to start. But for what we need, we want front end, and then we want blade templates because we're working with blade templates. So you can see here the loop variable is exactly what we want. We want to do a for each loop. So we're going to use this syntax right here and do a for each loop. So at for each, we want it's items as item. And then I always try to do this right away, but we want to end for each. That way we don't forget. So we have a paragraph, and we have a couple things we can do now. So we have access to this item. We can say item slug. Sorry, this needs to be double brackets. Item slug maps to item redirect. And now if we load this page, let's go back to our browser. Awesome, you can see our foo maps to https://www.google.com, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So there's one last thing that we need to do, which is actually redirect users to it when they go to that. So we'll go back to our route file, and we will get, and we're going to add a new method called mapping controller at handle redirect. So this is an interesting predicament because this star means anything. So it raises a very important point to bring up. These routes get processed from top to bottom. So despite us saying, hey, when we have anything, go to this handle redirect controller, it will try this one first, this one first, this one, and this one, and so on and so forth. So that means that if we go to mapping, it'll still work as we expect, but anything else will take us to this handle redirect controller. This means that if you wanted to go the extra mile, you should probably add some guards to make sure that no one submits the word mapping as a slug. Otherwise, it won't work for them. But more on that in a later lesson. So for now, we're going to go back to our mapping controller and add this handle redirect method. So we'll just add it at the bottom. So it's going to be a public function handle redirect. So I already see an issue that we'll run into, but we'll go ahead and add our brackets here. So what we really want, we want a string that is the slug. However, we don't get any variables from this. We just say anything. So what we want to do instead is use a bracket, the squiggly brackets here, and the word slug. So that will take whatever matches, which in this case is anything, and assign it to a slug. So now that we have that, we should just be able to return redirect. And then, well, we have to do something with our slug, right? Okay. So here's where we get into an interesting bit. So we want to redirect to, and we can probably just go ahead and inline this. but for simplicity's sake, let's not inline it. So we'll say that we want a mapping, and it is equal to app mapping where slug equals slug, and then we want get. So this will actually give us a list of mappings. We just want the first one, but the reason we get a list is actually kind of interesting. So we can say if count mapping, and maybe we should change this to mappings instead of mapping, is less than 1, then we want to return abort 404. And that will say, hey, we tried to find the slug that you were talking about, but we couldn't. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. And if we do have mappings, we'll take the first mapping, and you could probably optimize this a little bit more to find all the mappings and make sure there aren't collisions. But for the sake of this video, it's already running a bit long. I just want to go ahead and show you how this works. So we have our mapping, and we want the redirect. So now that we've done that, we've set up a mapping called foo. So foo should take us to Google. Uh-oh, it says undefined variable mapping. Okay, that's fine. That's because I had mapping instead of mappings. We just changed that a few minutes ago. So if we try this now, hey, we're at google.com. And just to clarify, we're on our local host 8000. We go to foo, it takes us to google.com. It works. However, what happens if we type in bar? You can see we get the 404 page that I mentioned here in the abort. So there's still a lot of room to add more to this project. And we do that more in the course that I was mentioning, the Laravel Foundations course that I'll have a link for in the description. So you might want to show a specific resource and maybe allow people to delete that resource or make it shareable online. You might want to allow people to edit that resource, change the slug, change the redirect, or maybe even delete it. And then you probably want to allow people to actually do those updates instead of just showing them a form. And in this case, same with the delete. You probably want people to actually be able to delete it. So this is a really cool example of showing you a couple parts of a CRUD app, but not a full CRUD app, in Laravel, and how quickly it is to make something meaningful and useful in Laravel. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe it. It really helps out a lot. And keep an eye out for any announcements about the Laravel Foundations course that we'll be launching soon. Thanks.